You wake up in the middle of the night with your heart racing. Another message on your phone. This time it's 3 in the morning. She's angry because you took too long to reply at 11 o'clock. You were sleeping, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that you don't care enough, that you always do this, that you never change. Your stomach tightens. That familiar feeling, guilt mixed with confusion. How did something so simple turn into a crisis? This is the moment when you realize something is profoundly wrong. But let me tell you something nobody says clearly. You probably knew this months ago. Maybe years. The question isn't whether you noticed. The question is why you're still there. Let's get straight to the point. Toxic relationships don't come with a warning sign. They start like fairy tales. She was perfect. Attentive. Passionate. You talked for hours. She said she'd never felt this way before. That you were different. Special. Finally someone who understood her. And you believed her. Because it was true, at the beginning. But then things began to change. Small things at first. A sharp remark here. A prolonged silence there. That way of twisting your words until you weren't sure what you actually said. You began to walk on eggshells, calculating every sentence, every action, trying to predict which version of her would show up today. There are days when she's the woman you fell in love with. Affectionate, funny, present. On those days you think, see, I knew it was just a rough patch. Things are getting better. You breathe a sigh of relief. Finally the storm has passed. But it hasn't. Because the next day, sometimes the same night, she changes completely. As if someone switched a chip. Suddenly you're selfish, insensitive, distant. The same things she loved about you are now unbearable flaws. Your independence becomes coldness. Your calm manner becomes lack of passion. Your friends became more important than her. And here's what destroys you inside. She has a frightening ability to make everything look like your fault. You argue, she explodes, says horrible things, disappears for days, and when she returns, somehow you're the one apologizing. You don't even really know for what, but you're there, begging her to forgive you. For her to love you like before. This has a name. It's called emotional manipulation. And it works because it attacks exactly where you're vulnerable, your desire to be loved, to be good enough, to make things work. She knows this. Consciously or not, she learns she can control you through guilt. She can keep you trapped by alternating affection and rejection. She can make you dance to her tune just by changing her tone of voice. And you? You became a hostage to her emotions. Let me ask you an uncomfortable question. How many times have you canceled plans because you were afraid of how she would react? How many times did you lie to friends saying you were fine? How many nights did you stay awake, replaying conversations in your head, trying to understand where you went wrong? The truth is this: you are no longer living your life. You are managing her moods. Healthy relationships don't work like that. In a healthy relationship, you are not afraid of your partner. You don't tiptoe to avoid explosions. You don't have to guess whether today is a good day or a bad day. You simply live, share, and grow together. But with her, you shrank. Your life got smaller. Your ambitions, your hobbies, your friendships, everything was gradually cut back to fit the tight little box she built for you. And do you know what's worse? You didn't even notice when it happened. It was little by little. A criticism here, a drama there. She didn't like that friend of yours. She frowned when you went to the gym. She made a face when you mentioned that work project that excited you. She didn't forbid it outright, that would be too obvious. She just made everything harder. Heavier. Until you gave up yourself. It's not worth the fight, you thought. It's easier this way. But easier for whom? Look around you now. Really? Are you the same person you were when you met her? Or have you become a faded, tired, constantly on alert version? That sparkle in your eyes is gone. That lightness. That confidence. Toxic relationships do that. They don't destroy you all at once. They take little pieces of you away day after day, until you look in the mirror and don't recognize who's there. And when you finally gather the courage to think about leaving, she senses it. As if she has a radar. And then the perfect version of her appears again. Affectionate, remorseful, vulnerable. She cries. Promises to change. Says you're the only person who understands her. That without you she is nothing. And you stay. Because this time will be different. This time she really understood. But she didn't. If you're following this reflection and feeling a tightness in your chest, if you're recognizing your own story here, don't go away now. What comes next may completely change how you see not only this relationship, but your entire emotional life. Because there is something happening behind the scenes that you haven't fully understood yet. Something about why you attract this kind of relationship, why you stay even when it hurts, and why leaving seems impossible even when you know you should. The answer runs deeper than you think, and has everything to do with things that were planted in you long before she showed up. Have you ever stopped to think about where this need to fix her comes from? To prove your love through suffering? This idea that a real relationship has to be difficult? Let me show you something disturbing. You were trained for this. Not on purpose. No one sat you down and said, "Look, real love hurts." But you absorbed that message from somewhere. Maybe from your own home, growing up. Maybe from how your parents related to each other. Or how they didn't. If you grew up in an environment where affection came with instability, where warmth was unpredictable, where you had to earn attention, congratulations, you were programmed to think that chaos is normal. That this is how love works. Children who grow up in emotionally unstable homes develop a hypersensitive radar for mood changes. They learn to read micro-expressions, to anticipate explosions, to make themselves small so they won't bother anyone. They become experts at managing the emotions of the adults around them. Sound familiar? Because it's exactly what you do with her now. You monitor her mood. Adjust your behavior. Try to predict storms. Take responsibility for feelings that aren't yours. You didn't choose this role. It chose you. A long time ago. And her? She also carries her own wounds. She probably grew up feeling abandoned, rejected, unseen. Developed a ravenous hunger for external validation. But no amount of attention is ever enough, because the hole she's trying to fill is inside her, and there's no external love capable of patching that emptiness. So she tests. Constantly. Pushes you away to see if you'll come back. Creates crises to confirm that you care. Punishes you for imaginary crimes because deep down, she's punishing all the people who hurt her before you came along. You've become her emotional punching bag. Paying for things you didn't do. Making up for people you never met. But here's the truth nobody wants to hear: you can't save her. No matter how much you sacrifice. No matter how many times you prove your love. No matter how perfectly you behave. It will never be enough. Because her wound isn't yours to heal. And the more you try, the more you lose yourself. Do you know the biggest mistake you're making right now? Believing that if you just find the right words, do the right things, be patient enough, she'll finally change. She'll see how much you care. She'll become that version of herself that appears on the good days. That's a fantasy. It's the same fantasy that keeps people trapped in destructive relationships for decades. The reality is this: she will only change when she decides to do the inner work that's needed. And that has nothing to do with you. You can't love her into sanity. You can't sacrifice yourself until she becomes healthy. It doesn't work like that. Meanwhile, you're falling apart. Your mental health is in shambles. You live anxious, always waiting for the next crisis. Your self-esteem has turned to dust. You start to believe the things she says about you, that you're insensitive, selfish, incapable of loving properly. But those aren't truths. They're projections. She's projecting onto you everything she hates in herself, everything she's afraid to be. And you're absorbing it as if it were real. Toxic relationships operate on an inverted logic. The more you give, the less you receive. The more you erase yourself, the more demands appear. The more you prove your love, the more it's questioned. It's a game where the rules keep changing and you can never win. And there's another element here that needs to be said: you're addicted. Not to her exactly, but to the cycle. To the emotional roller coaster. To the intense highs and lows. After so long in this dynamic, calm and healthy relationships seem boring. Your brain has been rewired to associate love with drama. Does that scare you? It should. Because it means that even if you leave, you'll need to relearn what healthy connection is. You'll have to resist the urge to recreate this pattern with someone else. And believe me, you'll be tempted. So what do? How do you break this cycle that seems so impossible to escape? How do you find strength when you're already exhausted? The answer isn't where you've been looking. You keep waiting for the perfect moment to leave. You wait for her to do something so terrible that it finally justifies your departure. You wait to gather courage, clarity, absolute certainty. But do you know what happens while you wait? You die a little more every day. Here's the brutal truth no one tells you: there is no perfect moment. There won't be a divine sign saying now's the time you can go. There won't be a cinematic final straw that spills the cup. Real life doesn't work that way. You just have to decide. And that decision will be messy, scary, and full of doubt. Because you see, leaving a toxic relationship isn't like ending a normal relationship. It's not a mature conversation where both people acknowledge it didn't work out. It's a war. And you need to understand that before you take the first step. She won't let you go quietly. She'll beg. She'll promise to change. She'll bring up memories of the best moments. She'll threaten to hurt herself. She'll become the victim. She'll make you look like the villain. She'll use every emotional weapon she has against you. And you'll weaken. You'll want to believe. You'll feel crushing guilt. You'll think, what if this time it's real? What if she really needs me? What if I'm being cruel? That's the moment that defines everything. Either you stand firm or you go back to the cycle, and then it starts over, only worse. Because now she knows she can bring you back. She knows her threats work. Her control over you grows. You need to understand something. Compassion doesn't mean sacrificing your sanity. Empathy doesn't mean accepting abuse. You can acknowledge her pain and still choose your own safety. Those two things can coexist. And look, it's going to hurt. I won't lie to you. The first few weeks after you leave will be hellish. You'll miss her. You'll question everything. You'll feel empty. Because your brain was addicted to that cycle, remember? And now it's in withdrawal. But something is happening beneath that pain that you can't see yet. Something like seeds being planted in the dark. It feels like nothing is growing, but it is. It just needs time. Because every day away from her is a day your nervous system is learning to calm down. Every morning you wake up without passive-aggressive messages is a morning your body is relearning what peace feels like. Every decision you make without having to calculate how she'll react is a piece of your autonomy returning. Slowly, you start to breathe again. But here's something most people don't tell you about leaving toxic relationships. The challenge isn't just leaving. It's not going back. It's not replacing her with another version of her. It's resisting the urge to chase that intensity your brain learned to mistake for passion. You'll meet someone kind, healthy, stable, and you'll find them boring. You'll feel like there's no spark. You'll catch yourself being drawn to exactly the kind of person you should avoid. The one with eyes that burn too intensely, the one who comes on too strong too fast, the one with energy. That's your test. Your chance to truly break the pattern. Because see, it's not enough to leave the toxic relationship. You need to heal the wounds that made you vulnerable to it in the first place. You need to understand why you confused instability with passion. Why you thought you had to suffer to prove love. Why you felt comfortable in the role of savior. That requires inner work. Therapy, probably. Time alone, definitely. Facing childhood memories you'd rather keep buried. Relearning your identity outside the context of managing someone else's feelings. It's not glamorous. There's nothing poetic about it. It's hard, uncomfortable, sometimes devastating work. But it's the only real way out. Because here's what finally clicks when you do that work. The problem was never that you weren't good enough for her. It's that you were too good for that situation. You invested precious emotional resources into something that was broken from the start. Not because you're naive. Not because you're weak. But because you have the capacity to love deeply. And people who love deeply are the perfect targets for those who don't know how to love in a healthy way. Your kindness wasn't the mistake. Your mistake was directing it toward someone who didn't have the structure to reciprocate it. And when you finally understand that, truly understand it, not just intellectually but deep in your soul, something shifts. You stop seeing the breakup as a failure. You start seeing it as survival. As self-preservation. As the first step toward the version of yourself that still exists but has been buried under all that guilt and exhaustion. That version of you is still there. Waiting. Patient. Ready to return as soon as you make space. So let's talk about what happens next. Because no one prepares you for this. At first, Freedom feels like loneliness. Silence feels empty. Peace feels too suspicious to be real. You'll wake up some days and feel that emptiness in your stomach. Not because you miss her specifically, but because you miss the intensity. The distorted purpose that was trying to save her. Your brain was conditioned to operate in crisis mode for so long that normality feels strange. It passes. I swear it passes. But you need to go through it. You need to sit with the discomfort without trying to fill it immediately. Without jumping into another relationship. Without seeking drama elsewhere. Just exist in the quiet until it starts to feel good instead of frightening. And slowly, interesting things start to happen. You realize you can make plans without anxiety. That you can see a message on your phone without your heart racing. That laughing has become easier. That breathing has become lighter. Small victories. But it's these small victories that rebuild you. You begin to remember who you were before. Those hobbies you abandoned? They come back. Those friends who drifted away? They show up again, relieved to see you well. That sparkle in your eye? It returns slowly, shy at first, but it returns. And then one day you notice something extraordinary. You went the whole day without thinking about her. Not consciously. You just lived. Worked, talked, laughed, existed, without that constant weight on your chest. This is the moment you understand. You are truly healing. But here's the most important lesson of all. The one I need you to engrave deeply. True love does not hurt. Period. It's not complicated. It doesn't require martyrdom. It doesn't demand that you lose yourself to find the other. Healthy love is calm. It's safe. It's predictable in the best sense. You know the person will be there, not because you begged or proved something, but because they choose to be. Every day. Consistently. Healthy love expands you instead of diminishing you. Encourages you to grow instead of cutting you down. Makes you feel more yourself, not less. And when there are conflicts, because of course there are, we're human, they are resolved with respect. No one uses your vulnerabilities against you. No one disappears for days as punishment. No one twists your words until you doubt your own sanity. This is not an impossible standard. It's the minimum. But you can only recognize this after you leave. After you experience being with someone who doesn't treat you like a project to fix. Someone who loves you for who you are, not the version they want to transform. Or even better, after you learn to be alone and enjoy it. Because then you understand that you don't need anyone to feel complete. You are already whole. A relationship becomes a choice, not a necessity. And that is the difference that changes everything. Look, I know it seems impossible right now. You're in the middle of the hurricane and can barely see the way out. But millions of people have been exactly where you are. And they left. And they rebuilt. And today they look back and are grateful they had the courage. You are not an exception. You are not trapped forever. The door is open. It always has been. You just need to walk through it. And yes, it will be difficult. It will be one of the hardest things you've ever done. But do you know what's harder? Spending the next 10, 20, 30 years of your life in that emotional prison. Waking up old one day and realizing you wasted your best years trying to make something work that was broken from the start. That is the real fear that should motivate you. Not the fear of hurting her. Not the fear of being alone. But the fear of losing your own life while trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. So here's my final question for you. How much longer will you give? How much more of yourself will you sacrifice before admitting that you've already given everything you could and it wasn't enough? Not because you are insufficient, but because the situation is impossible. The answer is within you. It always has been. And when you finally choose yourself, when you finally put on your oxygen mask first, when you finally understand that leaving is not weakness but the greatest act of strength, that's when your life truly begins. Because you deserve peace. You deserve to be loved without having to beg for it. You deserve to sleep soundly without anticipating the next crisis. You deserve a relationship where you grow instead of shrink. And this only happens when you stop waiting for her to change and start changing yourself. Not to please her, but to save yourself. That is the only change that matters. The only one over which you have real control. So take a deep breath. Look in the mirror. And ask honestly the person reflected there, do you deserve to keep living like this? The answer will set you free. If this reflection touched you in some way, if you recognized your story here, consider subscribing to the channel. Because your healing journey is just beginning, and there's much more ahead.